Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. This week's setlist curator is Rich Mahan. A guitarist and singer-songwriter, Rich's follow-up to 2018's Hot Chicken Wisdom, which in my opinion has no skips, is coming out in 2024. Rich is also the co-producer and co-host of the Rhino podcast and the Good Old Grateful Deadcast. If you live in Nashville, check out Rich in the Jerry Garcia cover band Hooter Roll and Grateful Dead cover band Stolen Faces. Welcome, Rich.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
This week's prize pack is provided by Shelburne Farms. Shelburne Farms is a sustainability education nonprofit outside of Burlington, Vermont. They're about to conclude their maple sugaring season, and a fresh batch of Vermont maple syrup will be available soon. The winner of this episode will be getting their raw milk cheddar cheese and on-farm produced maple syrup. If you're interested in visiting, learning, or purchasing farm-made products and other Vermont-produced items from Shelburne Farms, please visit shelburnefarms.org. That link will also be in the show notes. And thank you to Tom over at Shelburne Farms. All right, here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of a Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year their performance is from. Contestants who are all on a video conference together can message in their guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. Whoever is furthest from the correct year is eliminated. The last two deadheads standing will hear 3 tracks, and whoever is closest to the correct years in aggregate wins. We've got our returning champ Gavin here with us, and we'll meet the rest of the deadheads in a moment, but first, without further ado, the Grateful Dead. All right, the guesses are in. That was The Other One at Hollywood Palladium on August 6th, 1971. Really cool pick, Rich. Tell us about it.
That's my favorite show. 8671 is just a barn burner. And I was reading some of Dick Lotvala's notes. They were transcribed and they're online. And he said that 8671, and I agree with him, but it was cool to see him write this. And he's like, that is the best Hard to Handle. That's the Hard to Handle that Phil put on Fallout from the Phil Zone. It's just got a smoke and jam on it. But I picked the other one there because as I was listening to it, I'm like, oh, there's Bobby playing the riff for Weather Report Suite. And so he was toying around with it years before it actually became the song. So I thought, well, that's a tricky one. I'll just be a little stinker and put that in there to trick everybody. So
yeah, you trip people up with that. Everyone guessed 73, except for Jake, who guessed 69. So everyone's actually on to the next round, because everyone was 2 years off in different directions, albeit. We'll go to our returning champ, Gavin, who guessed 73. Gavin is 47 from Las Vegas by way of Chicago. Did you think it was a Weather Report suite?
100%. And the crappy thing is that 8671 show was one of the first tapes I had, and it was not nearly the quality that I'd heard here, and the Hard to Handle on that show is outstanding.
Yes,
but I was just totally. I had you had me hook, line, and sinker with that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Alyssa is from Portland, Oregon. She also guessed 73. What'd you hear?
I also heard the Weather Report suite, and I was between 73 and 74 because I know those are the 2 years that they played it. I'm glad that I went 73 so that I can stay around. I'm glad that everyone else was fooled as equally as I was, but yeah, totally thought that was Weather Report.
And Darryl is 49 from Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Were you thinking the same thing, Darryl?
So I heard the Weather Report. You know, my intuition, just hearing it, I didn't hear the other one. You know, it could have been a Dark Star. My intuition said 72. but I said, and I remember Bobby teasing Weather Report in some 72 shows, but I didn't want to be off because I know they played it, starting in 73 and throughout 74. So I kind of did a play the game move and went with 73. But that, man, right off the bat, that is tricky. But I'm glad I'm still alive.
Jake is 18 from Colorado. Jake, you guessed 69.
So 69, I went 69 because to me it sounded kind of like Live Dead era to me, and like what I associate everything because I'm a guitar player, and I kind of share this vibe with another guy who curated a set list, Jay from the Jerry Tone Store, who's a friend of mine. I think of this stuff in terms of the guitars, and so when I hear like late 60s, early 70s Dead, I think Jerry on humbucker pickups because it sounds a little grittier. And so I was like, this sounds like Live Dead era because his vibrato is really like shaky and it sounds really gritty. But I almost did a play the game move. I was going to say 70, but then my gut told me, no, go 69 because I've seen too many people get burned not going with their gut before. So
this is a really good contestant pool. I'm really excited to see where this game goes. Rich has another great pick. Let's hear it.
On a 10-mile ride, hot as a pistol, but cool inside. Cat on a tin roof, dogs in a pie. Nothing left to do but smile, smile, smile. Now he's gone. Now he's gone. Lord, he's gone. He's gone. Like a steam locomotive rolling down the track. He's gone, gone, and nothing's gonna bring him back. He's gone.
The guesses are in. He's gone at Century 2 Convention Hall in Wichita, Kansas on November 17th, 1972. Rich, a much more conventional pick after the curveball on the first one. Tell us about that. He's gone.
That He's Gone, that show, I really like that show a lot. It's Dave's pick. It's Dave's Picks 11. And there's a lot of great music on there. The opener, Promised Land, is probably my favorite Promised Land. Jerry is just so on point on that one, and just lots of great solo work by Gar on this show. But the reason I like That He's Gone is that one of the great things about Billy is how he would approach the songs differently night to night. I love that about him. And in this case, if you listen to that version, he just keeps that beat straight through the whole thing. And, it's got the half measure in there. And a lot of times the drummers will flip when that half measure comes and get right back on it. But he just plays it straight. And the way that the music then falls back into him, I think is really unique. I just love that version.
Well, thanks, Rich. Great pick. Darryl is the only one who got it exactly. 72. Nice pull, Darryl. You're on in the next round. Why 72?
Well, my way of playing this is I rely on my intuition. I'm not a musician, or at least not a very good one. I don't know gear at all, but I felt a kind of fall later 72. As Donna came in, I panicked because I started hearing a sort of 73 in there, but wanted to stick with my gut. So happy I'm moving on.
Nice work, Darryl. Jake and Gavin both guessed 73, and they're both on the next round because Alyssa guessed 74. Jake, 73. Tell us.
I'm going to go the musician route. again, because this was one of those things where it was like I heard alligator, and so I knew it either had to be 72 or 73, and my gut told me go 73 because this sounds like one of those shows that's like early 73 where it can be mistaken for 72.
Damn, you are definitely tuning into Jerry. So you are friends with the great Jay from Jerry Tone Store?
Oh yeah, I love Jay. He's the best, man. I was so stoked when I saw he did an episode.
Yeah, he was incredible. What a nice guy.
He's
great.
lovely. I love that guy, man. He's
Great guitar
an
player.
incredible guitar player, great singer. I mean, and the guy knows his stuff. Anytime I have a question about any kind of Jerry Tone thing, I know where to go immediately. So yeah, shout out Jay.
I love Jay's videos where he comes on and like he'll do like if Jerry was playing on Staying Alive.
Yeah,
something,
exactly.
you know, or ABBA. It's just very cool. A lot of times he nails it pretty damn good.
It's way better than it should be.
I totally agree. It's awesome.
Rich, what's your approach in your bands with playing those Jerry licks?
I don't try to sound just like Jerry. I tend to put more of myself in it. You know, growing up playing Dead tunes and learning so much about guitar from listening to the Grateful Dead. And I started out playing blues stuff like all minor key and not switching when the chords change, to like learning how to follow chords when you solo from Jerry. It was just a real mind blow when I figured that out. But, you know, every once in a while, if there's something that I think is really important to the song, I'll try to like nail it that way. But a lot of times I'm just putting my own thing in it because that's the way I want to play it. It's just fun to play it that way.
Awesome. Gavin also guessed 73. You're on the next round, Gavin. Tell us 73.
I thought it was the 22873. He's gone. It didn't sound like 74. I didn't think it was going to be 72, so I kind of did the playing the game thing. I don't have any music background, so the non-musician, me and Darryl, and I'm just happy to be moving on to a tough group today.
Alyssa, a very reasonable 74.
My gut was telling me 73 the whole time, which would have gotten me closer. I don't know. At the last second, I just changed it to 74, and I don't know why, really. I'm also not a musician, so maybe I would have done better if I was. But who was it just a few minutes ago talking about staying with your gut? So I should have done that. Yeah, if I had stayed with 73, I would have been moving on.
It's a tight window, of course. Tell us how you got into the Dead.
I started listening to them several months before I got to see them. I was listening to them. Summer 94 is when I started listening to them by Missed Summer Tour, from a good friend who I had actually known from a high school church youth group. And then we lost touch after high school, reconnected in the pizza delivery scene. We were both delivering pizzas in the summer of 94, and he was into the Grateful Dead. And so he turned me on. I started listening to mostly like albums, studio albums, and some of the live albums. And my friend's name was Yakin, who is, if my brother Ricardo was on the show a couple of weeks ago, and Yakin is the one who came in and swooped him up and took him to his first Dead show in the fall of 94. But I knew Yakin earlier because we were closer in age. But during that fall of 94 run, that was the Cap Center run. That was our local shows. I was in school. I went back to college. I was also had other friends at college who were into the Dead. So I was really knee deep into the Dead at this point. But I wouldn't say I was the best student, but I didn't want to fail my classes. And I had 2 papers due and there were weeknight shows. And I was like, I'll just wait for the spring. And lo and behold, my brother got my ticket for the first night. I actually don't know if he exactly got my ticket, but it's a better story to say that he did. So where at first I was just like, what? You don't even like the Dead and you get to go. But then like it ended up being a really great thing because now I have a family member who is a fellow Deadhead. And then the Grateful Dead were accommodating to my spring break in 95, which I thought was very kind of them. So we went on Thursday, March 23rd, 1995 is the day that changed my life. And it's a holiday now. So it's coming up soon, March 23rd. So my brother, that was his second show, but it was also, he will say it's his best show. It was just a magical night. There was just magic in the air. And yeah, we'll text each other every March 23rd and say Happy Charlotte Day. or occasionally we've like gotten together and like had a beer and listened to that show. And it changed my life more and changed me as a human being. Like I was a different human coming back up from Charlotte than the person who went down. And I'm a person who's gone through a gender transition, and I would still say that day is the singular day that changed me as a human the most. So that, I mean, just the whole scene, the music, the community, the drugs I was on. After that, I was just like, I think I'm going to do this a few more times.
It's cool that your first show ended up being one of the pretty good 95 shows.
Yeah, it still had its 95-isms, and maybe if you weren't there and you listened to it, you might go, well, this is 95. It's not amazing. But for me, when I listen to it, I get the chills at certain moments in that show.
And the Dead were a companion for you during your gender transition?
Yeah, I would say, well, among other bands, Fish was definitely as well. This was much later. I mean, more recent, my gender transition is more recent than that. This was just transitioned a few years ago. But actually, I was listening to a Fiona Apple album in 2020 when I transitioned that I was really into. So I had a lot of music companions during that. But yeah, the Dead definitely, they've been a part of my life for everything.
Thank you so much for coming on, Alyssa. And please tell Ricardo we say hello.
I definitely will. Thank you.
Jake, Gavin, and Darryl on to the next round, vying for 2 spots in the finals. Let's hear Rich's next pick.
Jojo left his home in Tucson, Arizona, for some California grass. Get back, get back, get back to where you once belonged. Get back, get back, get back to where you once belonged. Get back, Jojo.
Okay, Get Back at the San Francisco Civic Auditorium on January 28th, 1987. Rich, tell us about it.
Well, it's obviously in the wrong key for Bobby's voice. I played that for David Gans once, and he's like, right away, he's like, wrong key for Bobby's voice. It was I mean, the crowd went nuts but it was kind of a background thing for me because I was at that show. It was one of the Chinese New Year's shows. There was a giant balloon dragon, like a dragon made up of hundreds of balloons of different, like the belly was yellow, the arms were dark green, it had balloon whiskers, and then they would open up the back doors at the Civic and the breeze would come through and the thing was moving. Like it looked like a balloon going down the Macy's Day Parade, just slowly kind of moving. And I took a heroic dose of mushrooms that night. And when they got into the jam in Shakedown Street, which was the song before that, the opener, I just went right through the ceiling of the building out into outer space. And I didn't come back until space, coming out of space into the end of the second set. And then the show was over. And I'm like, wait, where's everybody going, man? I'm just ready. That was a great show. It was a totally awesome show. Super fun. But I just thought that would be a really fun pick just because it's such a anomaly. They didn't play that one. I think that was the one and only time, if I'm correct.
Yeah. What was the reaction in the crowd like?
If you listen closely to the tape, people kind of think they know what it is. But then as soon as Bobby starts singing, then you hear there's a cheer, like everybody was like, oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Gavin was the only one who got it. How'd you pull that one?
I had listened to that tape. I always thought it was kind of a goofy tape. The Shakedown that's before it is pretty goofy as well. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't that right around the time when was it Bobby's dog Otis passed?
Otis had passed, right? Yeah.
So I knew that era, and I knew that the Get Back. I just remember it just being all silly, and then with the different sounds and stuff in there. So yeah, I just remember that one. I got lucky. That's all.
So people were aware of Bobby's dog?
Yeah, Otis was well known. You know, he was in a lot of lot of pictures, and he hung out all the time with them. He was over Front Street all the time with the band, and the word just got around. It just really shook Bobby when Otis died, you know. He was one of those special dogs. I think everybody has one, you know, if you're a dog person, you have one or two of those in your lifetime, you know, that are just, they're just special dogs. And I think Otis was that for Bobby, you know. So it shook him pretty hard.
Well, Darryl and Jake both guessed 85, so everyone's on the next round again.
Oh, man.
Darryl, why 85?
It just sounded like 85. I mean, I'm just not familiar with that show. I know they were playing Revolution a lot in 85. It just had that quirky, little off Beatles tune. And I thought by 87, they kind of got rid of that goofiness. So I just didn't think it was as late as 87. I was thinking anywhere between 83, 85. But I think I have 85 down pat, but I guess I don't. So.
And Jake, 85.
So I almost said 86 because I don't know. I always associate that kind of 85, 86 time with some pretty weird choices. But it was hard because it was one of those things that you're only hearing Bobby sing. I could barely hear Brent in there on keys. I caught a little bit of it, and it was enough for me to be like, okay, Brent's still here. And then Jerry's guitar tone too, like it's kind of that same thing. That 85 to 87 period has that sound.
Sure. Everyone's on the next round. Let's hear Rich's next pick.
Well, it's a true saying. All that shines is not gold. Well, it's a true saying. All that shines is not gold. And like a good woman tells, you got to reap just what you sow. Will you lie, cheated, whoa, for so long? Well, you lied, cheated, whoa, for so long. And you were wrong-doing woman, and another queen is on your throne.
The guesses are in. Next time you see me at Thelma Theater in Los Angeles on December 12th, 1969. Rich.
I just think this is a really cool early version of Next Time You See Me. It's obviously a lot slower, and you have Jerry singing along with Pigpen. And then later on, as we know, like from the Europe 72 versions and everything, Pig would just sing it. I just thought it was a very cool version of it, and really interesting to do a little research. And Thelma Theater is right there on the strip in between the Rainbow and the Whiskey. So this would have been a pretty small show.
Very cool. So Darryl and Gavin got it exactly 69. Jake guessed 68. Gavin, tell us about 69.
I don't have much to say other than it was a slower version, and Phil Lesh songs and the late 60s are definitely my kryptonite. And it was honestly just a guess and kind of in the playing the game mode. I was either putting 68 or 69.
Darryl, what were you thinking? 69.
I have no idea what I was thinking. I mean, it just sounded like 69. I was sort of on the fence thinking maybe 70 because, you know, could there be that long of a gap between, you know, a kind of putting this song into the rotation more frequently? It just sounded like 69, so kind of went with it.
Nice pull, Darryl. Jake, 68.
That was just one of playing the game, man. I was like, it sounds really early. That late 60s period is something I'm really not all that familiar with. That's what happens when you play the game, right?
Sure. How'd you get into the Dead?
So when I was in like my sophomore year of high school, I had a couple of friends who were Deadheads, and they showed me Europe 72, the Brown Eyed Women off of Europe 72. And that was the first Dead song I remember really, really liking. But I remember thinking like this doesn't not that it doesn't feel like the Grateful Dead, but I always associated the Grateful Dead with like, oh, they're these, they're on so many drugs playing for too damn long. And like this, that song's like 5 minutes long. And so I was like, all right, I don't know. But I came from being a guitar player, like one of my biggest influences is John Mayer. And so like I was a big Mayer, well, am a big Mayer fan, which I know is, I just lost half the audience. That's it.
No.
So I remember thinking like, well, my friends told me like, yeah, man, like listen to Dead and Company because that's Mayer playing guitar and singing a lot of it. And so I was like, okay, well, where do I start? And they were like, just listen to this album. And it was, I think it's July 14th, 2018 at Folsom Field. And that show top to bottom is just incredible. The songs are actually at like a reasonable pace. Like, so that helped. But I remember listening to the Brown Eyed Women off of that. And that was like 15 minutes long. And I was like, okay, I get it. This song is incredible. This jamming is awesome. And then slowly, more and more I started getting into the like finding the songs and then going back and listening to the Dead do 'em and then finding what I liked about Jerry in things other than the Dead too. Like I really for a long time I've been a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young fan for a long time, and I never knew that he was the one playing pedal steel on Teach Your Children. And just stuff like that where I was like, "Oh, okay, this guy is actually a very, very good guitar player." And then, starting to dive in, like I did Cornell 77, and I just remember listening to Loser off of that show. And I think actually another guy who's curated a set list, Michael Palmisano, he helped me get into the Dead through his YouTube channel, and he broke down that song, and I remember watching it, and he talks about Jerry's solo in that song, in that recording, as sounding like the guitar version of the Desperation of the Gambler, like in that song. And that was one of those things where I'm like, man, that is really incredible because it doesn't sound like a lot of other guitar sounds. Like he's pinching so many harmonics and just making it sound desperate. And so I went and saw Dead and Company a couple years ago. I was there 2022, and that was a big moment. It was an experience I'd never had before, like pulling up into Boulder and there's 50,000 people. Everybody's wearing tie-dye. Everyone's really, really cool. There's guys walking around telling you, 4 for 20 ice cold fatties. Everybody from every age group, all races, genders, sexualities, everything. It was incredible to see and like have all these old heads who are like in their 70s or 80s, and they're like just amazed that there's someone who's, at that time 17 at this place.
Well, like Jay and Gabe Bergman, who came on and curated, you have a great instructional Instagram page. Do you want to plug it real quick?
Oh yeah, so my Instagram account is at Jake M Guitarist. I do a lot of like guitar pedal and like gear demo stuff, but just playing for the fun of it too. Like I've been very lucky to get to collaborate with like Jay at Jerry Tone Store. I've done some demos for some of the stuff that he sells. I don't play out live much. I want to change that in the next couple of years, but it's a practice tool, for being like getting out there in front of people, because you play differently when people are watching. Like you can sound incredible in your basement, but as soon as people are watching, man, everything you thought goes out the window. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense how that works, but it's just the way your brain works. All of a sudden you're like, great, I don't remember any scale. I don't remember the chords of this song. I had those moments a couple of weekends ago. I was very fortunate to share the stage with the guys in Steely Dead, which is a great Colorado-based band that mashes up the Dead and Steely Dan. But Dave Abair, their lead guitar player, he used to play with Melvin Seals and JGB. But it's one of those things where like you get up in front of people and you think you know these songs, like Eyes of the World, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, I've forgotten everything that I thought I knew, so I guess I just get to fake this for a 5-minute long jam or whatever it is that they have you take.
Rich, did you have the jitters initially getting up on stage?
Yeah, definitely. But now it's like I get off on it. You know what I mean? It's like you got that energy whether you're on stage or not. And so it's kind of like, are you going to use that energy for good or evil? You got to get up there and do it. So you got to, if you learn how to focus it, it's like riding a horse. It's like, it's not instinctual at first, but it becomes that way. And it's the same thing with playing guitar on stage, and you'll get on stage and remember it. And then the best part is not having to remember it. And it just all comes out naturally because you're not thinking, you're just feeling and playing. But I wanted to say, Jake, I know you mentioned the steel part that Jerry put on Teach Your Children. You probably are familiar with this album, but just in case you aren't, make sure to check out David Crosby's first solo record. It's called If I Could Only Remember My Name, and it's got Jerry, it's got Phil, it's got Billy plays drums on it, and it's ripping. It's so damn good. You're gonna love it.
I'll have to listen to it because I've never gotten into the most of their solo stuff. I listen to some like solo Graham Nash stuff. I mean, obviously Neil Young, but I feel like that doesn't count.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's Neil Young. So
no, you'll dig it, man.
All right, man. Well, I'll have to check that out.
For your money back.
Jake, yeah, like I said, I've been following on Instagram for a while, and you have great videos, and everyone should check you out. Jake M. Guitarist.
I really appreciate that. Well, thank you for having me, man. This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad, people like this show, and I'm glad, you get to keep doing it, because it was one of those things where as soon as I found it, I was like, I can tell this is going to suck me in, it like really hard, and it did, and it still has, and it's, it was super fun, and I was incredibly excited to be a contestant. So thanks to everybody else, all the other contestants, for being so cool, man, and Rich for curating. Thanks for, taking the time to put this stuff together, man.
A lot of fun, man.
All right. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it, man. Darryl and Gavin are on to the finals. Rich has 3 picks, and whoever's lowest in aggregate across the 3 picks wins the Shelburne Farms prize pack. Let's hear the first song of the finals. An exquisite Dancing in the Street at Boston Music Hall on June 12th, 1976. Rich.
That spring, early summer 76 tour is great stuff, man. Donna, in my mind, was getting her feet wet in 72, 73. And then, then they took their hiatus. And when they came back, it was obvious that they'd done a lot of rehearsing. They had a lot of new arrangements. And, the band just sounded different than they did in 74. Big time. Only played a handful of shows in 75. And that one is just, it's a great example of Dancing in the Street, that cool jam they came up with. Yeah, man. Everybody out there, check out. Actually, it's around here somewhere. There's a 1976 box set that has all these great shows in it. And it's out there. I don't know if it's sold out or not, but Discogs, people.
That part of the jam, why did you highlight that part in particular?
Because I think it's really indicative of that era, the mid late 70s, and all the instruments are really syncopated, but the drums are just totally straight behind it, right, and just holding it down. And you listen to other versions of that from right around that era. They didn't nail it like that every time, but that's a pretty damn good one. They probably high-fived after that set was over and off stage.
Well, Gavin got it exactly 76. Darryl guessed 77. Really nice poll, Gavin. How'd you come up with 76?
I've always loved dancing in the streets, and the way for me to differentiate if it was 76 or after 76 is by the drums. In this, starting in 77, they really disco down that song, and they had a kind of more of a disco beat to it starting in the San Bernardino show. So I just was listening for the drum cues to make sure I was right, that it was 76, that it had just a little bit of a kind of a quicker beat to it. Once I heard him come out of that newer jam, I was able to figure that it was 76.
Nicely done, Gavin. Darryl, 77.
It was either 76 or 77 to me. For me, 77, it just has a little more juice than 76. And I thought there was just a lot more juice to that dancing. I think the way Gavin was able to kind of tell the difference between a sort of rocky beat versus a disco beat, I think is a really good pull. I didn't pick up on that. I just felt kind of 77 energy, which I think 76 to me is a beautiful year, but 77 has that juice. It's a little bit more up tempo, and that's what I heard. Did hear Keith's piano, which was 76-ish for sure, but yeah, just a hair off.
Yeah, just a hair. How'd you get into the Dead, Darryl?
Well, really for me, it began in high school. My dad was a big jazz fan, so I kind of grew up with a lot of improvisational jazz around me. So I think I, had a orientation to the Dead style of music early on. But as soon as I got to high school, this was the late 80s. The Grateful Dead were sort of making that renaissance in the culture at that time. And, adolescent identity formation back then had a lot to do with what kind of music you were listening to and whether you were listening to it authentically. And for me, kind of being invited into the Dead's world, and I absolutely loved just sort of archiving tapes, coming up with, dream set lists and all that kind of stuff. When Jerry died, it was shortly after my own father died. And so that kind of took me for a loop, and gave away all my tapes to a friend, and sort of, separated myself from the Dead's music for a while, but kind of got back into it, I'd say in the early 2000s. And ever since, I had my own radio show for a while, the Make America Grateful Again radio show, and did that for 6 years at the University of Scranton in Pennsylvania when I was there. Listen to it all the time. And, Mike, I've played this game, for a long time before actually playing this game. So I'm so glad, you put this idea into the world and into reality. So
Thanks, Darryl. Yeah, it shows that you've been playing this game for a long time. You're excellent at it. I'm wondering, when you gave away your tapes, was it all just like too much for you?
yeah, so that whole period kind of took me for a loop, and I kind of wanted a sort of like a blank slate. And I was wrapping up college at the time, and I kind of, started having to think about, the real world and being an adult and all that kind of stuff. And it's not to say that I thought, loving the Grateful Dead and being an adult are incompatible or anything like that. It was just, time to me to sort of reset. But yeah, it didn't take long for me to sort of get back, on the bus, as they say.
What got you back on the bus?
It's interesting. It's not that I turned away from music. I think actually I as a fan, I kind of went back, I guess, to, you would say, the roots of the Dead, which would be jazz. which would be bluegrass, the entire sort of American songbook. Kind of expanded my love of music and musical knowledge and things of that sort. But so, what I do for a living is I teach philosophy. And so in philosophy, and I try to do this in my own classes, we search for knowledge, we search for truth. And, when you're teaching philosophy and you're having philosophical discussions with a group of teenagers or college students, I've always thought of it as kind of, searching for the sound in the way that the Dead did in a improvisational way. So, yeah, for me, the music of the Dead I could never tire of it. It's always unfolding. It's always adventurous. So yeah, it ended up being in sync with my own kind of professional life and what I was doing as a student and, later as a professor and teacher.
So in these discussions, people are jamming essentially.
Exactly. And, in philosophy, you say you follow the argument wherever it leads. And so, the Dead sort of followed, the riff or the theme or the melody, wherever it was going. So when I listen to shows, I that practice of, following Phil's bass line or what is Bobby saying here? It helps me develop my own practice as a teacher and a philosopher. Yeah, I kind of see the Dead's music in that light.
Beautiful, Darryl. Beautiful. Thank you. 2 more songs. Darryl is down by 1. Let's hear Rich's next pick.
That sucked. Are you eliminated if you're more than 10 years off?
That was a Drums Into Not Fade Away at Winterland in San Francisco on October 20th, 1974. Rich, tell us about it.
That's Mickey and Billy playing together for the first time on stage with the Grateful Dead in 3 years? No, 3.5 years. This is the show where Mickey came back because he thought that there was going to be no more Grateful Dead and he had to get in one more jam with the band. And so, yeah, that's why I picked that one. That's kind of a cool moment.
Well, they both got it, 74. Gavin, how did you know it was 74 with the 2 drummers? Did you recognize the show?
No, it was just the very end. Some of the guitar notes that I was hearing at the very end had some similarities to like the Fresno show. That was all I was able to pick up in terms of familiarity was in that, later 74 era with that guitar. The drums, I had no clue.
Okay.
I had no clue.
Darryl, what was the reason you put 74?
All right, so I heard 2 drummers pretty much right off the bat. And then I started getting this Grateful Dead movie ambiance. And I'm thinking, wait a second, this is just Billy, right? And then I kept hearing 2 drummers. And then, as Gavin said, as soon as that guitar came in, I said, well, either I'm hallucinating two drummers or this is 74 Winterland. And then I put in 74. You know what, Rich? I wasn't even thinking about Mickey's return on the 20th. So yeah, phew. I mean, this is
nice.
I'm like my body right now is sore. This is like so hard.
That was very impressive. Before we go on to the last song of the finals, unless there's a tie, we'll play more. Rich, how did you get into the Dead?
It was inevitable. My parents, I wouldn't call them Deadheads, but they definitely liked the Dead. They caught them in 73. They saw one of the shows at the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis in November of that year and always had their records. It was inevitable that I was going to get dragged to a show. And I went a little bit kicking and screaming, although I knew it was going to be fun because everybody from school was going to this show. It was November 85 at Long Beach Arena in California. And it just blew my mind wide open. Just the first show you go to, it's like, what is going on here? I'd been to a bunch of concerts, but I'd never been to a parking lot scene like that. And then going into the show and it was an experience. And I'm like, well, I'm definitely going to do this again. And I did that quite a bit of it, actually. So the more you get into it, the more you get into it. So, then it was off to the record store right after that. And I picked up whatever I could. And then, of course, found out that, some of my friends had some cassette tapes and then had to get a cassette to cassette deck. And then just started making copies of tapes as much as I could. And that 8671 show was my first favorite show and still my favorite show, but it was mislabeled 21370. So for a long time, I thought I was listening to 21370, which of course is another epic show, but that wasn't it. Found out later that it was actually at the Hollywood Palladium on 8671. It kind of blew my mind because I'm like, oh, that was right here in town. That's pretty cool.
And how did you end up hosting the flagship Grateful Dead podcast?
I started doing the Rhino podcast, and that was going really well. Rhino has been working the Grateful Dead stuff for almost 20 years. And we just said, you know what? The Grateful Dead don't have a podcast. They need a podcast. And so I started working with Doran Tyson at Rhino at the time. And we started talking about, who would be good to to do it with. And we came around. She suggested Jesse Jarno, who had written liner notes for some releases. It's great working with Jesse. Jesse is an amazing writer. He's an author. He's written some great books, including Heads, which goes deep into our scene from another angle, which is great. He uncovers things that you would never, ever think in a million years you were going to learn about the Grateful Dead. So working with him is truly a blessing. And to get to do this, if you would have told 18-year-old me, that I was going to be doing this now, 35 years later, I'd say, yeah, get out. You're full of it.
Yeah, if you told me 2 years ago I'd be talking to you, I would have said get out of here because I'm a longtime listener. I'm a huge fan. I think what you guys have put together is like a real work of art. I'm proud of Guest of the Year, and I think it's cool, like someone's farthest off and they're eliminated and blah, blah, blah. But what you guys do is the way you interweave the narratives, every episode is as complex and intricate and fascinating as, like a movie. It really takes you on a ride, and I am in awe of your guys' podcast. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say.
And I want to ask you about, Hot Chicken Wisdom. And you have another album coming out this year?
Yeah, I've started working on a new record. So I work on about a 5-year cycle, it seems. Yeah, that record was kind of a tribute to a friend of mine, Brian Harrison, who passed away not long after I finished my record before that, which is called Blame Bobby Bear. We did it over at his studio, and he was leveled by a massive heart attack just out of the blue. Like, it shocked everybody. And at his memorial, I was talking to somebody else, and we were just laughing at how funny Brain was. Everybody called him Brain. And I said, he's the guy that took me to go eat. Nashville hot chicken is a big deal here. It's very fiery fowl, a spicy bird. And he was the first one to take me to it. And he was famous for taking people to Prince's hot chicken and hurting them with this chicken. And I said, you know, he had an insight into things. He had hot chicken wisdom. And then I got to write that down. So that became the title. And so a lot of these songs on here were ones that we started kind of working on before he passed that he loved. And then other ones I wrote with him in mind and just kind of put it together. So it's a loose tribute to him, certainly. But I was going to be making this record, of course, before that happened. But it turned into something that I did with him in mind quite a bit, actually.
Some of the songs remind, it feels like they could be in the Dazed Confused soundtrack.
I've been called old school musically, but that's fine. You know, it's like I am who I am. And it's a snapshot. It's just like we say, you know, we're lucky that we lived in a time where we got to see Jerry, you know what I mean? Or any of these guys play, because I firmly believe this is going to be the classical music of our era, that people 200, 300 years from now are still going to be listening to the Grateful Dead and studying it. And I think a big part of that, obviously the Dead they did it all themselves. They were just geniuses and innovators like no other band has been. If you think about everything they did for like just marketing, the ideas they came up with, direct marketing for a band that's the Dead's idea. They started that. Sound system innovation. Where would you be without Bear and the way that he designed sound systems? Modern concert sound owes so much to him. But all the people that keep it going too, you know, there's all these the guys themselves still, they don't have to be touring. They're out there doing it because they love it and they want to take care of this music. And the people at Rhino are the exact same way. They love the music. It's genuine. It's not just a job for them. They care about the music. The president of Rhino, Mark Pincus, that show that I told you about, my first show, he was at that one. We laughed because we're like, oh, I was at Calaveras. We didn't know each other then, but he was going to shows when before me. He started a couple years before I did. So it's like, these people are true Deadheads, taking care of the legacy from that standpoint. But you know, the fans, and think about this too. You go to a bar, there's Monday nights, maybe open mic night, right? Tuesday night is the jam night. Wednesday night might be comedy night, but there's a Grateful Dead night now. At a lot of these places, it's more than just a band. It's a genre now. It's crazy. I just don't see how this band isn't going to be impactful in society for centuries to come, literally.
Fuck yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Rich. Gavin is still up by 1, so Darryl needs to make up 1 point. All right.
There's no peace in the barnyard, people, since the little red rooster's been gone. Hey there, little red rooster's been gone. Well, you ain't shit to me.
The guesses are in. It was Little Red Rooster at Long Beach Arena on November 16th, 1985. Tell us about that one, Rich.
Brent. I'm a huge Brent fan. I love all the keyboard players that have been with the Dead. I'm a big Pigpen fan. I love Keith. I love Brent. Caught a couple of Vince shows, but that's kind of where it winded down for me. Started going to a lot of Jerry shows. You know, after Brent died, it was tough for me to go and not have him there. I really connected with Brent. He was really important. Most of the time I'd be on that side of the stage, right in between Jerry and Brent. That was my spot. And he's part of the reason that, I just connected with the Dead in the first place. So it was tough for me to see him without him playing. And I love a B3 playing with Jerry. And I got that in JGB. You know what I mean? Because you got Melvin laying down the sweet B3 licks, laying down the heavy shag carpet with Jerry. So, yeah, that's a good one. That actually is the song that at that show that really got me going. That was the first weekend I saw the Dead. That song in particular, I went home with that because I was a big blues fan at the time. So to see them do that was pretty special for me.
Does your band throw down a rooster every once in a while?
No, well, now I'm going to have to, of course. But,
do you feel like Rooster is slept on a little bit in the canon?
I totally do. Yeah. I don't know why. But yeah, I kind of think it is.
Shout out Iko Adam. Yeah, my friend Adam and I trade roosters all the time because, I think it's a little slept on.
Yeah, it's awesome.
They both guessed 87, so Gavin wins. Congrats, back-to-back champ. Darryl did not make it easy for you. Why 87?
It's amazing. So what I've learned tonight is I don't listen to enough Audience or Matrix recordings. I got to brush up on that. I said earlier I thought I had 85 down pat, and the 87 song I guessed 85, and the 85 song I guessed 87. I don't know. I thought it was 87. I was hoping Gavin would say 90 and I'd pull out the amazing come from behind win. This was like going 15 rounds with Ali. Man, Gavin, you are a true champion. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Gavin, 87, back-to-back champ. Tell us why 87.
Because I was wrong by 2 years. I thought it might have been earlier than that. I don't listen to a whole lot from that time frame. The Brent verses I knew kind of spanned a little bit of time, but I put in 87 and then I heard the organ and I was like, man, that does sound a little bit earlier. It does sound 84, 85-ish with that tone, but I was sticking to 87. I just that's what I thought it was.
Nice work, Gavin. Congrats. Darryl, incredible run. I love that there's a deadhead teaching philosophy out in the world. It makes me feel better at night.
There are quite a few of us. Mike, this is, such a great thing you've started. Keep it going. And Rich, I love the way you love the Dead.
Thank you.
and that came through, through your. I think about like, what would I do if I were curator? I think you were outstanding tonight, and it's a pleasure to meet you, get to know you, and Gavin, hats off.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rich, thank you so much for curating.
You were great. I truly didn't think I thought this was yours. I truly didn't think I had a chance. I'm not being, facetious or anything like that. It was fun.
Good time, yeah. And Rich, as Darryl put it, it was a total pleasure hearing your picks and hearing your passion for the Dead. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and curate.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was really fun. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to Rich for curating. A link to his website is in the show notes, as is a link to the good old Grateful Deadcast, which is a little silly to put in there because everyone I'm sure already subscribes, but here we are. If you live in Nashville again, check out Hooterroll and Stolen Faces. Thank you to Shelburne Farms for providing the prize pack. Appreciate all of you over there, especially Tom. Thanks for setting it up. Also, Jake's links are in the show notes to his Instagram, Jacob at JakeMGuitarist. For all the show links, including our YouTube channel, go to guesttheyear.net. And if you want to be a contestant on the show, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at info@guesttheyear.net. Shout out to Dylan for drawing the poster and James and Jack for helping out behind the scenes. Thanks to the amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to Gavin on the back-to-back victories. And to our other contestants, thanks for playing, and remember, it's all one song anyway.
And I bid you good night, good night, good night. And I bid you good night, good night, good night.